Hi, everybody. This is Chelsea Matson with National Farmers Union here. Thank you for joining the webinar for Produce Safety Rule Draft Guidance, How and Why Growers Should Comment. We'll be getting started here right now. So just a bit of housekeeping first to go through some logistics. This webinar is being recorded. We're going to send out a version of the webinar afterward. It will include a link to the recording. It will include a version of the slide deck that we're showing right now, as well as links to the different resources we're going to be highlighting later on in the webinar. For those who are joining in, please mute your lines. We're going to have a Q&A at the end of the webinar, but if you have questions that come up as we're speaking, please feel free to put them into the chat box in the Zoom. It should be at either the bottom or the top of your screen. There'll be a chat feature. You can either chat to everybody or you can chat to Kara Fravor, who is the host for this meeting. And Kara will kind of be looking for those questions and interrupting speakers as they go to ask those questions so we can answer them in real time. We're hoping to speak for about 30 minutes, if not less, and kind of run through these resources and then provide a lot of time for discussion and answering questions as needed. You do not need to share your video unless you really want to. I think that covers all of the various housekeeping items. Moving on to the agenda, this is the same agenda that was on the Eventbrite for those who have registered. We're going to have some introductions for myself and the other speakers who are here and the groups that they're a part of. We'll then cover what is the Produce Safety Rule Draft Guidance, why commenting is important, going through some various resources, as well as specifics about how to submit a comment. And then the Q&A at the end. So a little bit about National Farmers Union. We were founded in 1902, and we represent family farmers and ranchers. We're dedicated to protecting and enhancing the economic well-being and quality of life for family farmers. We really take a comprehensive approach to family farming and agriculture and all of the facets and things that affect rural life to make sure that they're achievable and sustainable for family farmers. We do a lot of educational work like this here. But we also have legislation that we perform and lobbying on the Hill, and are really dedicated to the cooperative business model as well. So a little bit more about the Local Food Safety Collaborative. That is the project that I'm the director of. It is funding we received through FDA. It is a cooperative agreement to provide education, outreach, and training to small local growers to help them improve food safety and produce safety on their operations. And kind of in light of the Food Safety Modernization Act and the Produce Safety Rule and changes that are going to be happening in the marketplace, small growers are going to be more affected by this. And so we're really invested in making sure our work is targeting those growers and helping them move their food safety practices forward, even if they don't need to comply with the Produce Safety Rule. And then Billy, do you want to introduce yourself as well right now?
Hi, y'all. My name's Billy Mitchell, based out of Brunswick, Georgia, but work for the local Food Safety Collaborative and travel around doing food safety work. Glad to be here with everybody today.
Thanks, Billy. And those are pictures of Billy and myself. I always find it helpful to be able to picture who's on the other end of these calls as we go forward. And so with that, we'll move on to the next slide and let Kara Fravor introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Kara Fravor. I wish I had a snazzy black and white photo to show you of myself as well, but I don't. So I'm with the National Young Farmers Coalition, and we are a chapter-based organization of about 42 chapters in 29 states. We've been around since 2010, and we are farmer-led and really trying to address the issues that young farmers face around the country, both new farmers and multi-generation farmers. And we're doing that through policy change, through this network of chapters, and with business services. And I work in business services, and I'm pretty focused right now on food safety and making sure that young farmers and especially pretty small farmers have the tools they need to fit into the new food safety rules that are around and impacting their farms and businesses. So we are working through the Local Food Safety Collaborative on a guidebook and videos and online resources, as well as lots of PSA grower trainings and other shorter workshops.
Thanks, Kara. And then moving on, Socrates, do you want to introduce yourself? And when you want to forward the slides, just let me know and I'll tap to forward the slide for you. Socrates, I don't think you've unmuted yourself.
Me now.
I can hear you now.
Oh, perfect. Sorry about that. It was a beautiful speech that was providing. My name is Socrates Trujillo. I work for the Food and Drug Administration Produce Safety Network. My role is to collaborate and be the technical advisor for the education and outreach of the produce safety rule and assist the state's regulatory partners on providing tools that they need to reach out to our farmers and make sure that we provide everything needed for a implementation of the rule based on education and outreach. So if you want to move to the next one, please. I'm just one of the 6 current members of the Produce Safety Network. I am located in Maryland. Well, the start is located on the map. However, we have colleagues all over the United States, and our basic role is to understand the reality of farming in the regions that we're located at, and then assist our state partners with the information that is needed for the education and outreach of the produce safety rule. The next slide, please. You're going to see that we are located in different regions, as you saw on the map before. This is our information. If you need to reach out to us, we're here to assist. We usually ask you to copy your state representative on the produce safety rule so that way they know we're communicating, and if the industry wants to communicate directly with us, so they know what concepts or questions the industry has. And I'm here to be available. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yeah, thanks, Socrates. With that, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which Kara Favor will be leading.
So I'm kind of giving a bit of overview about what is the Produce Safety Rule Draft Guidance. So hopefully all of you on this call are a bit familiar with the Produce Safety Rule, either because you teach about it or because you're a farmer and you've been to a training. And you may know that for quite some time we were all anxiously awaiting FDA's rollout of the draft guidance. And that was published in November. It's a pretty hefty document, so it's about 140 pages of information that helps farms, either covered farms or even farms that don't need to be covered, figure out how they would comply with the produce safety rule, with FSMA's produce safety rule. So it's a broad range of recommendations, has lots of examples in it, examples about how to understand if you're eligible or if you're exempt or not, if you're eligible for any of the exemptions, examples about what to do if there is wildlife intrusion in your field, just kind of in addition to giving some clarity around exactly what the rule means, it also just kind of fleshes out some of the details and gives a little bit more context and picture of some of the thinking. It isn't exactly binding, so it's not necessarily law, like the way that the produce safety rule itself is, but it will inform inspectors' interpretations. So like the rest of us, inspectors need to know a little bit more about how to interpret the produce safety rule. And this is guidance from FDA about that. And so they will be taking this draft guidance and final guidance into consideration when doing inspections. Water, the entire section from the produce safety rule about water is currently under consideration, and so that's not covered at all in this guidance in draft, and probably unless something changes, we don't expect to see it anytime soon. And comments, so then comments for this guidance are due on April 22nd. So they put out this guidance, and then they're asking growers and those of us who work in the sort of produce safety worlds to give some feedback on things that aren't clear, things that you'd like to see more specific information about, examples that they'd love to have a little more clarity on. Can you skip to the next slide? So why should you comment? That's kind of why we're doing this webinar today, is to encourage growers to just put in comments. And there are a number of us out here kind of cheerleading for why comments are important. Firstly, FDA is excited for your comments. They really do want to have as much grower feedback on this as possible. Also, commenting just historically is pretty helpful and pretty impactful. So in the original sort of draft of FSMA, there was tons of commenting, and those comments were taken into account, and there were some changes made. I think feedback in other areas, so there's been lots, specifically around FSMA, there's been lots of feedback about the water rule or about soil amendments, and those areas are getting reconsidered. So your voice is really important, and it's helpful for you to make sure that the needs of your farm are heard by the FDA. Yep. And it could be that even if one person says something really helpful and clarifying, that could make it into final guidance and be helpful for lots of other growers.
All right, thanks, Kara. This is Chelsea again. So I'm now going to go through some various resources that would be helpful in deciding what to comment upon, and people who have gone through and analyzed the guidance already. To be clear, this webinar is not where we are analyzing the draft guidance and providing recommendations on what to comment about. We're just kind of directing you to different resources and folks who have already gone through it, or it might spark some ideas for questions that you have yourself. First off is the Produce Safety Alliance webinar and draft guidance. The Produce Safety Alliance, or PSA for short, did an hour-and-a-half webinar a couple weeks ago, back on March 26th, that is recorded online. There's a link to it at the bottom of this screen, and we'll be sending that out after the call as well, and we follow up with the recorded webinar. This webinar was more geared towards educators than it was to growers specifically, and tended to take a lens of the Produce Safety Alliance is the standardized curriculum that growers have to go through growers have to go to if they fall under full compliance with the Produce Safety Rule. It's the current standardized curriculum that FDA acknowledges. There should be some more coming in the future, but this is kind of the one for now. And so their lens of looking at it was, how do things in draft guidance affect that curriculum? And those were some of the things that they tended to call out, but I think are still impactful for a lot of growers. It didn't cover the whole guidance. It was things that PSA found useful or thought might need further clarification as well. In addition to the recorded webinar, I kind of took a screenshot here of, there are notes from the webinar as well as the presentation that they showed. So all of that is available online at that link. And you'll have to scroll down a little bit. They have a variety of webinars that they do on a pretty regular basis. This one is towards the top. They're done in time order. So I think it's the second from the top right now. Next is the Michigan State University Extension's agri-food safety videos. Michigan State University Extension is basically creating YouTube videos right now to go over the guidance chapter by chapter. Right now, they're up to 8 videos covering chapters 1 through 7. There are 9 chapters in the draft guidance itself, so there's still a couple more to come. But in these videos, they're summarizing the guidance and highlighting certain aspects of the draft guidance that differ from what has been published elsewhere or other thoughts that we had as an understanding of FDA's thoughts previously on certain parts of the produce safety rule and its interpretations. As you kind of watch the video, they'll actively highlight sections of the draft guidance on the screen or make big squares around different pieces of information to let you know what page they're on. In addition, they are also, they have some nice like B-roll or side footage of people on farm that kind of, you're not just scrolling through the guidance with them. There are other things you can look at while you're going through it. And I have found these pretty helpful for myself as I've been going through and looking at the guidance. Next is the National Sustainable Agricultural Coalition, NSAC. They posted a blog yesterday that includes a comment template, which are both kind of featured here. On the right is a screenshot of their blog post with the link at the bottom. And then within that blog post is this template that they've created to help growers or farm organizations submit comments. They highlight some things that they appreciate being included in the draft guidance, as well as some things they feel were left out of the draft guidance. For example, they wish that more information had been included about how a qualified exemption could be withdrawn from a farmer. So one of the three, you can be covered, you can be qualified exempt, or you can be not covered by the produce safety rule. But if you are qualified exempt, there is a way that could be revoked under certain circumstances. And NSAC is looking for further information in the draft guidance to talk about what scenarios could lead to that. So that's something that they highlighted. They basically broke it down to 5 main issues, including allowing vermiculture as a treated soil amendment, including guidance on the compliance and enforcement. They wanted examples for farms with crop and livestock rotations. They encourage practical examples for farms that are both organic and need to comply with the produce safety rule, having more examples of that vein inside the guidance. And also encourage keeping the guidance flexible with really practical options. So that's available at this link. Their suggested template is about 5 pages long and can be edited, to be longer or shorter, depending what you also feel is of concern to you and your operation or your organization. And the blog is a little over 1,000 words, I believe. Next, the guidance itself. If you're going to be commenting about the draft guidance document itself is obviously a good resource for a grower to go through. I would not maybe encourage reading it. It's a very long document. I think it's 141 pages, not including references. So it's a lot of time to invest, but there are also these FDA at-a-glance overview documents that are a bit shorter. They have an at-a-glance document for each chapter of the guidance, and that could be an easier way to go through quickly and see, I have a question about this in the produce safety rule. I wonder if that's reflected in guidance, and you can poke around and see the questions that you currently have. And that link is available at the bottom to take you to kind of the overview of the FDA website for the draft guidance. And it has links to those at-a-glance things as well as to the full draft guidance. And then another thing that could be helpful is just looking at other comments that are posted in regulations.gov. Billy will be talking in a moment about how you get to this section and how you can find this on regulations.gov. But there are currently, I think we've moved it up to 42 yesterday. I took these screenshots yesterday, but I think we're at 42 comments so far for this draft guidance. And you can see what other people have found that they have questions about or concerns. And maybe you also have those same concerns and you want to make sure those are shared, or you feel differently about things that they're highlighting. I think that's another good way to go about looking for things to comment upon. And then in terms of resources for farm organizations, we kind of were thinking about growers and farm organizations and how this is different. I think the NSAC template could be really useful for farm organizations themselves, or they could draft a different template if for their growers or members, if they feel differently about it and have the time. Or if you like any of these tools or this webinar, please feel free to share it with your organization, with your members, to encourage them to comment as well. We have a LFSC, Local Food Safety Collaborative. We have a Facebook and a Twitter, and so this will all get posted on our Facebook and Twitter once the recording is finalized and we email it out. So feel free to share it from there, from our website and our social medias, or send it out in your own newsletter or some other email blast of some variety. And with that, I will give it to Billy.
All right, thanks Chelsea, Socrates, and Kara. For those of you sitting in front of a computer, if you'll take a break from checking your email, it's okay, we've all been there, and open Google or Ask Jeeves or whatever your favorite search engine is, and let's all put in comment produce safety rule guidance. For those just on your phones, thanks for your patience during this part. So as I'm scrolling through the first page of suggestions that I just got, I don't see a link that clearly and quickly brings me to commenting. Even some of the first hits, once you dive into those pages, it can be very hard, if not impossible, to find the link on where to post a comment for the draft guidance. So for that reason, we suggest directing people directly to the regulations.gov website. And that's the website you see on your screen right now. We'll give those who are able to get there a moment to type it all in. That's www.regulations.gov.
We also just put it in the chat box if you're on a computer.
Thanks, Kara. Once there, you can either put in the name of the document or something shorter like standards for the growing, packing, harvesting, or the docket number itself, which is FDA-2018-D as in dog, -3631. So again, for those of you that are playing along at home, you can either put in the name of the document itself, which is standards for the growing, harvesting, packing, and holding of produce for human consumption, guidance for industry draft guidance, or something a little shorter like standards for the growing, packing, harvesting, or the docket number itself, which is FDA-2018-D as in dog, -3631. So once you've done that, you can please press the search button, and next slide, please. And that should take you to a page with a few relevant options. And you want to make sure that you click the Comment Now! Button next to the title that says Standards for the Growing, Harvesting, Packing, and Holding of Produce for Human Consumption, Draft Guidance for Industry, Availability. And that's the button circled on your screen on this webinar. Next slide, please. After you've clicked the Comment Now button, you should end up on a page where you're able to begin commenting. Circled on this slide is a link to a commenter's checklist, and we'll briefly cover that in the next few slides. Next slide, please. Maybe you don't like using the internet. That's okay. You can also submit your comments by mail. If you do so, just make sure that you include the docket number, and it probably doesn't hurt to also include the title. It's a mouthful. Standards for the growing, harvesting, packing, and holding of produce for human consumption, guidance for industry draft guidance. Next slide, please. A few tips we've heard from people who have been actively engaged in commenting in the past are that comments that contain real examples and data that support your position are encouraged and will have the most impact. Provide solutions to potential challenges that you identify. Share what you feel is missing from the guidance, and then also reference specific sections of the guidance. And also, just please keep in mind that when you write something in all caps, that makes people think you're yelling at them, and even if the guidance makes you want to scream, in my experience, when someone yells at me, I don't do a very good job of listening. And then this slide that's up right now is the link that we circled earlier on the comments page. The commenter's checklist downloads the PDF shown here, and it provides some tips on how to word your comment. As Chelsea mentioned, we also strongly recommend that you look at the comments that have already been posted and the NSEC flag on commenting, both to get a feel for how people are submitting, and maybe you'll see some issues you can lend some more insight to. That's it for me, and up next are questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Billy. So if you have questions, I think we can either, there should be an option to raise your hand and Kara can unmute you, or you can try to unmute yourself, and at that point, just ask the question. Again, we have, I think that the three of Billy, myself, and Kara are probably pretty prepped to talk about some of the resources available and specifics about how to comment. But if people have questions about specific guidance things, we also have Socrates here from FDA who might be able to answer some of those questions as well. And if we're unable to answer a question, we'll make sure we write it down and try and follow up afterward. And then for those who are on the phone, if you are not following along, online or something like that, you can unmute yourself with *6, and you can raise your hand with *9. Additionally, if you are nervous about submitting a comment in the chat or having it associated with you, you can also change your name in a Zoom webinar. I think if you hit participants, you can find yourself and give yourself a fun fake name. If that makes it a bit easier to ask your question.
Hey, Chelsea. Annalisa asks if you can guide us through looking at the current comments that have already been submitted.
So, in order to do that, so you kind of follow the similar search function that Billy went through, www.regulations.gov. Search for the same information, by the title or by the docket number. You'll then come to the same screen before that for the comment now. But instead of hitting comment now, you would just click on the blue standards for the growing, harvesting, packing, that whole title. And that should bring you to, I'm going to move around to some slides here, to a page that kind of looks like the top right image here in terms of primary documents, standards for the growing, harvesting, packing, and holding. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a comment section with a view all. And from there, if you hit view all, it'll bring you to the section on the picture on the left where it says, 41 results, comments from all these various individuals. So also something to note now is that if you do submit a comment, you will have your name associated with that comment. But you'll be able to see you can click through and see the different comments other people have had. The screen's a little bit fuzzy here, but the top comment seems to be from Don Stockel, who is with the Produce Safety Alliance. And you can see people commented a couple times with various things. You don't have to write a long letter. It can also just be a simple question or piece of information. Anything that Kara, Billy, or Socrates you'd want to add about how to look for other comments that people have put in?
Connie from Produce Safety Alliance also adds that it'd be good to mention that it often takes a couple days for your comment to appear in the list. So if you don't see it immediately, don't think it's a failure, but it might take a while. And then we also have a question. So Annalisa, let us know if you felt like that answered your question. And then we also have a question about if somebody's unclear about something in the draft guidance and they want to ask a question because they don't understand it, can that be a comment? I think
is that okay?
Yeah, you want to
Socrates here? Yes. No, actually, the answer is yes. And if you can provide a little bit of background why this is confusing for you, that would be even better for us to understand that the way we phrased that specific part of the guidance wasn't clear. So the more information you can provide why isn't clear enough and you're asking the question will allow us to address with more information for you and anybody else who may be having the same question.
I would add, this is Kara from the National Young Farmers Coalition. I'd add that there definitely are some places in the guidance where even the nation's leaders in food safety are still really feeling a little confused about how it's interpreted. And so definitely those are places that we all want to be asking comments and encouraging FDA to be clearer and more specific. And if your question was maybe simpler, like if it was just something you thought you weren't understanding, definitely reach out to us first, and maybe we can see if that is a common area of misunderstanding, or just put in your comment, however you'd like to do it. Socrates, can you talk a little bit about where FDA might have struggled to provide guidance and any areas that FDA is specifically seeking input on? I think there are a couple that FDA has listed.
Hi. Yeah. So the guidance document is requesting more information about biological cell amendments of animal origin. We're still collecting information, and that will be very helpful if you have way of how you apply the biological cell amendment of animal origin, or if you have data that proves that we can do better on that matter. That's one of the areas that we will be more than happy to revise what you can provide to us. Something that is I think is highly important is the utilization of materials when you are working on your farm. We need to hear from you about the usage of wood, plastic or cardboard, and how you use them, and is there anything we can do better for that? Questions that we have in there as well. Something that we need to hear from you too is about how we're handling drop produce. It's something that we struggle a little after we put out the first draft guidance, the one that you're reading. So if you can give us information about that, that would be greatly appreciated. That's at the top of my head right now that I can ask you to give us information about that. So yeah.
And Socrates, do you want to say anything about areas where FDA, maybe there was, I don't know if you can say this, but if there was lots of back and forth about a specific topic, or something that was a little bit of a struggle to figure out how to talk about in guidance?
Was actually the reason why we're on hold right now, exploring the requirements of Super E, that is water. That's the reason why we are discussing internally what we need to do to pay attention and make sure that we address all the comments from all the farmers. So that's probably the best example that we have, that we do listen to our constituents, that we do listen to our farmers, and that's the reason why that's there. So we utilized a lot of your 10 questions to address some of those concerns in the guidance document. So you can find it there, but probably the most concern of a lot of our colleagues or lots of farmers was the utilization of adequate, what it means adequate on the actual regulation, and we were trying to address that adequate, depending on where you are, means something different, and we're talking about the regulation itself. So if you indicate, or if you see that what we mean with adequate on the part of the regulation is not clear, we would like your feedback that we need to do better, and the reasons why we're confusing you with that.
Thanks, Socrates. Any other questions? Questions about how to submit a comment? Questions about any of the resources highlighted? Any thoughts to share about videos being more helpful versus maybe the webinars or other things that folks would maybe be looking for? All right, Kara, are there any more comments coming in?
Right, we have one other topic. Is it better to submit a long list of questions or concerns, or to have one comment for each topic?
It's a good question.
Yeah, I don't. Socrates, do you have an answer for that from the way that it gets kind of logged on the back end?
Yes, it really doesn't matter how you submit your comments, because we are the ones who are going to be separating the comments and addressing them appropriately the way we're going to revise them. So again, we will be more than happy to accept every single comment, but we need to see what the position is of the farmer asking the question, meaning that what is the question about. So you don't have to submit questions for the topic separately. It doesn't matter, but so just submit your comments. That's what we need. So.
And then what happens after the comment period closes? What are the next steps, and how long do you think it'll take to go through the rest of the process?
So this is Socrates again. For what we have done in the past, there's a limit of how much time we have to address the comments and make the guidance final. It really depends on the amount of comments that we get and what are the choices that the agency decides to follow. So the shortest period that we have addressed in the past is 90 days, that means around 3 months. But again, we have moved forward and requested extra time because of the comments that needs to be addressed differently, or we need more information to address some of the comments. So it will be depend on the position that the agency decides to take of answering those questions, those comments. But we will be disclosing that information when the decision is made.
And do you feel like you're getting enough comments, or if you don't feel it, or is there a situation where FDA doesn't feel like they get enough and so they'll extend the time period?
I have not seen the comments that we have received as yet. I don't know how many we have. I don't know if we have that information internally, to be honest with you, and it's because we're waiting for the 22nd of April. We know a lot of people wasted the last minute to submit their comments. So I don't know the answer to that one, but I can find out.
We have a couple more comments or questions. Lucy O'Day suggested that making the process of commenting easier and more approachable would likely get more folks engaged. And an easier process might mean more people commenting. I certainly agree. I think we all probably certainly agree with that. That's a good comment. And Don asks, so he says, we know the guidance isn't legally enforceable document based on what FDA says at the beginning. Would you, this is probably to Socrates, would you say that the guidance is important because growers can use the guidance to support their practices and decisions in case an inspector questions or has concerns with on-farm observations?
Hi, yes, that is correct. This is Socrates. Remember, the guidance document is a way how the farmer can see the current thinking of the agency. It is not the only way that the farmer is going to be able to satisfy the requirements of the rule, but it is a guidance. So as Don has indicated, it is not a binding, so you will not be inspected against that document. You will be inspected against the regulation. However, the guidance document gives you an idea of how you could potentially be able to comply with those requirements of the rule. Again, it is a guidance. You can do, as a farmer, any other ways of making sure that you are satisfying the requirements of the rule. But we thought it was important to clarify or extend more the position of the agency through the guidance document. Does this satisfy this question?
Yeah, I think so. Do you think that satisfies your question, Don? Yeah, he says yes.
Thank you.
And this is Chelsea again. Just I think a way to think about this draft guidance that we talk about internally with some of our farmers union, food safety staff and colleagues is if a grower can really see themselves within the guidance. If you don't see practices that you're using reflected within the guidance and you have questions about whether or not those practices would fall within the requirements or you want to be sure that they do and are reflected in the guidance, that is something to think about and a way to analyze the guidance and find comments that you want to submit. I think that is why, for example, in NSAC's template, they talk about having more examples for farms that are both organic and need to comply with the produce safety rule. They want to see some more examples of practices that are similar to organic practices. Okay. Any further questions, comments?
I am not seeing any other comments to this topic, but anyone can feel free to unmute themselves and blurt out their question now, or we can wrap up.
All right, I'm not hearing anything. And so I think with that, I'll just thank everybody for joining the webinar today. I just pulled up on our screen the Local Food Safety Collaborative social media profiles for Facebook and Twitter. We're Local Food Safety Collaborative on Facebook and at Local Food Safety on Twitter. So we'll be posting information that was shared here as well as this webinar on the social media platforms, as well as we have a website, www.localfoodsafety.org. We'll be posting this webinar there. And then you can also sign up for our newsletter, which comes out every other month to get further information on trainings and workshops, blog posts, and other information coming that is more geared towards local growers. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And thank you to all our speakers.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
Thank you very much.